It's recording. Okay. So in first of this lecture, I gave you information about ASP.NET and what is the core strength, especially in case of web forms. So in this second part, we will quickly go through visual programming environments, advantages, disadvantages, and I will also show you some screenshots of Visual Studio.NET and how they provide us those features. So it's more about rapid application development, built-in components, the advantages, and some benefits and drawbacks. Okay, so we all know that the IDEs which we use may be textual. They provide us textual interface or graphical interface or both. Okay, and Visual Studio basically provides us both. I show you sometimes source as well as the code and so on. And the way we discussed in framework provides you some predefined functionality and you can use them. Similarly, in case of Visual Studio.NET and these IDEs, they provide us certain built-in functionalities, built-in classes, built-in packages to for data connection with databases, data retrieval and display, which is very easy. Maybe it's just like configuration rather than doing a lot of if-else statements. Interface and navigation is very easy, like master page I showed you. It's very easy to have consistent look and feel of the page, navigation, so on, menus. Login and authentication. Now controls are available. You just need to configure them. Okay. So whole idea is drag and drop, rapid application development. Okay. These are the few examples like Microsoft Visual Studio. Although it's expensive because this is proprietary in nature, you also get some open source solution, but they will not provide you that much functionality. So price factor is over there. Adobe Dreamweaver, for example, is good for textual interface, and it also provides you graphical, but it will not show you graphical enhanced interface as you have in Visual Studio. So Visual Studio does not show you well the code view. Most of the user advanced, especially the developer in the industry, to modify the code of a ASPX page, they open the code in ASPX file in Adobe Dreamweaver because it provides a very intuitive interface. And if they want to do something on the graphical user interface, they open that in Visual Studio. So this is one practice people do. But Visual Studio provides you that feature in the environment. There are also specialized environments, especially in gaming domain, where the specialized tools are available to build your game. And the example which I will show you, screenshots are mostly from 2017. A couple of them from 2015, but there's no difference. In 2017 they would say. So the way we created new projects for your system one or in the workshop, similarly we can create a new project, but in this case we will not select empty website. We will select web forms. And if you look over here, we also have options of MVC. What is MVC? Model View Controller. So do you know what MVC pattern? If you know, that's very good. You can implement it. We will discuss in upcoming lectures. If you don't know, that's fine. You can go with web forms. Model View Controller design pattern. So we will select web forms and you will get this application. And you see, this time application is not empty. We have a lot of folders and pages and configuration files. We don't need to know all of them. What we know is we got few ASPX pages like default.aspx, about.aspx, and these two ASPX pages. We got site master, remember, the top and left menu and so on. We have web configuration files and so on. So there are various configurations files, some predetermined folders like app data. If there's data, we will bring the data over here. We put in this folder. In short, we have a structured hierarchy over here. All the scripts, JavaScripts, they will be over here and so on. So we get this application. So if you open default.aspx page, and you can see it can be dropped down further, and we can click on a CS file. In this case, when we create a web page from web forms, that we get CS file as well, as I show you. So this is the graphical user interface, and this is code view. So which view user want to use, it again varies from context and preference of the user. Sometimes if they are doing certain very specialized work, developers try to use the code view. Okay, if they are doing some rapid application development, it's just basic application, nothing advanced features, so then they go for graphical user interface. And most of the cases it's mixed. Okay. And one of the core feature of Visual Studio is drag and drop. So if you're not using it at all, then what's the purpose of using Visual Studio? Okay, so you have to make advantage of it as well, because it provides you built-in component, auto-complete features, and some other stuff. So in short, it would be combination of both. Sometimes you would be working on interface, graphical interface, sometime in code behind, and sometime ASPX file. So no matter how much you use drag and drop, eventually for final tweaking, you need to go to ASPX page. You need to modify something in ASPX page to get some finalized stuff which you need in your website, which cannot be done visually. So previously we were using HTML page and we were renaming it as ASPX. But in this case, whenever you add a new page, you select web form, because now we will do code behind coding. Okay, we will not follow the pattern which is before. The objective was because you are doing PHP, so follow the same pattern in ASPX. It will be easy for your understanding. And now in second half of this course, we will only use ASP.NET using web forms. So this will give you an idea of the transition between traditional programming approach and this advanced approach.
Is there not PHP in exams?
We will discuss it. We'll discuss it. Okay. But again, if there will be a code, it will not like that. If you have to write exact bracket, exact semicolon, it will be more like a pseudocode. If it will be, we will discuss this. Okay. Because I think there is a sample paper uploaded and there is some code I asked for. So do remind me in maybe in second last or before that lecture we can discuss that. So I need to go to presenter view just to highlight. So if you look over here, let me adjust my screen. So we can add new web pages. Okay, you go to add and then you click new item and then you can click web form and you can name your web form, and then that web form will be added into your project hierarchy. Okay. So again, same way, same procedure which we did before. So in this way you can add more web pages to your website.
Is that with master page, does that just add the master page header and menu and stuff like that? Is that adding that on, or is that to define it?
You have to define it. Master page has to be defined as well. Okay. If you look over here, it's good you raise this question. In this case, for example, I have selected web form. I didn't select it web form with master page. So when this page you will create it will not inherit the master page. Okay. So you have this option over here. Okay. So navigation again is a important component, and for navigation, if you did in PHP, you have to create href and all the stuff, and then you have to include the file. In this case, the way we add web pages, similarly, instead of going to web section, if we go to data section, we have this option of adding new XML file, and we can drop a menu control which is available in toolbox on the web form, and through this icon we can access the properties, we can access the attributes, and in that attribute you can see we can choose a data source. So we have a menu and we have to select a data source. That data source will basically provide the information that we need to display in a menu. Okay, so when we click this drop down list, it will basically show up certain pop-ups, and then we can browse to the specific XML file or database that is holding a menu. That's it. In this case, we are not writing any line of code, href, and what should be the link and so on. So this is just configuration. Drop the control on the web page, okay, and browse to your code file. Again, we will be doing all this stuff in upcoming labs. And once you do that, you will get menu on your web page. And this is how the ASP menu looks behind the in ASPX page. So this is the menu control, and you can see that data sources sitemap data source 1, which is basically linked to the XML file. Okay, and you can go through all these details. They're pretty simple. So sometimes we can call them control, sometimes a component, but again we are referring to the same thing. Okay, they encapsulate a lot of functionality. the lines of code which we need to write before in order to give them assign them values. No, we don't need to do that. They will just take some input, we need to configure them, and they give us output. All the underlying logic that is already implemented over there. Okay, so we can extend this control and we can customize them as well according to our requirements. Okay. For example, we have drop down list over here. So in toolbox you have drop down list. If you drop it on the web form and if you click this arrow button, you get certain options. For example, choose a data source, and you can similarly select the data source. Could be a database table and so on. So this properties window provides you attributes which you can set. Okay. So this is a programming interface for the user, especially for novice user who are new. They don't need to go to code anything. You just go identify the specific property. For example, auto post back. In this case is false. When user will choose something, page will not submit. If I make this to true, as soon as user will click this drop down list and select something, post back event will happen. So if it's a country list, if users change the country, auto post back will trigger, and so on. So all things can be triggered from here. If it is enabled, user can select it. If you disable it, user cannot do anything with this. It will be visible, but it will be locked, and so on. See, we have data source, and we will see these properties further in upcoming lectures. So properties window provides you interface. There are many data driven controls. Okay, button, input type, so text boxes, they are input controls, user interact with them. We have data driven controls like data grid. Okay, for example, in order to populate those controls, we need data connection. So in toolbox we have SQL data source objects. Okay, now what this object do? It holds the configuration to a certain database. If we drag and drop this control on a web form, it will not be visible to user, but it contains all the information which can help us to retrieve the data and assign the data to a certain data control. So this is the you can think of configuration object. And we did workshop 4 and 5 in which we did a lot of functionality with database. We have to open connections, we have to create commands and so on. And we do it again and again whenever we need to do it. So if we have objects like this that hold this information, then we can reuse these objects very easily. Okay. So this is how they are displayed on the web page. So if you look over here, for example, this is with data control. I'm adding some existing. In this case, what I did, I brought in the Northwind database into app folder. So in one of your workshop, you will do this. So instead of putting it somewhere else, you bring it in, because all the programming which we are doing in Visual Studio is design phase, and at design time we need to link our data grids with the database. So at design time we want to see something. So that's why we brought in the access database by following the same procedure. Which what we did, we go to the add and we basically click existing item. So we right click on the app data folder, add existing item, and then we browse to that access files. And when we used to import that file, it converts into MDB file. MDB file is basically SQL Server database, you can think of. Okay, so it converts the format, which is okay for us, no issues. And then if you have data grid control, this is data grid control which is available in data tab of toolbox. If you drag and drop grid and if you click this arrow, you get an option of data source. And if you click new data source, what it will do, it will open this wizard that okay, the new data source should be SQL or some other source. In this case we basically take into account SQL database, and this is the name of that source. Then the wizard starts and it asks us to select the database. So this is the SQL data source object we are configuring now. Okay, so it asks which database to select. We select this MDB database, which was already in the app folder, and then we give name to that data source, and in this case we call it as connection string. You can rename it according to your preference. And then when you select the data source, it displays you the tables. Now all the tables that are present in that database using that connection string, they will be brought in front of you. And if you click this drop down list, you can see all the tables and you can select any one of them. There's category tables, there's product tables and so on. Or you can specify your own custom SQL as well, the way you did in workshop 4 and 5. If you click that one, it will provide you input box and you can do it. And you can also use these buttons to create an SQL statement. Okay. And then it will display, you can click on test query button to view the data. Okay. And then visit ends, this data source would be selected for this data grid. That's it. Now this grid will bring in all the information, that all the columns that are in that table, and they will be displayed to the user. So this is for categories table. Similarly, I can do for products table and so on. So not even a single line of code I have written. Drag and drop and configuration. So on this page I have basically information from products table because this was a big table. So you can see that data source is selected and this data source is configured with products table, and it displays you all the columns at design time. Okay, and you can further manipulate it, which you will see in the labs. And once you run the application, it will show you all the data. And you have done programming for this page, and you know how much line of code you have written, and how difficult it was to go and locate where I have to print this and so on. In this case, it's less than a minute, maybe 30 seconds. If you're used to the interface, you can display the data. No matter how many tables you have, within minutes you can create a very big website that is displaying all this information. So that was regarding display of information. We also need to basically do some improve look and feel of the data, and for that we saw CSS we can use. So in this Visual Studio .NET, there are certain built-in features available. The certain built-in styles are available. So you have different styles, for example, simple, professional, so on. If you click them, select them, they will get applied on the data grid. That's easy. We have features like enable paging, sorting, editing, deletion, selection. For all these, if you have to implement in your first assessment, you have to code for them. Over here, templates are provided. You need to tweak them, and we will see in upcoming lectures, but major functionality is available. If you have implemented paging is very tricky. Okay, in this case it would be very easy. So those changes will, if you run your application, those changes will apply on this, and you will see that there is a edit button, delete button, select button, and so on. Okay, so you can edit the data within the grid. For example, if I click edit, text box should appear on here. For that, we need to do some more programming, and we will see in upcoming workshops. Okay, but there are certain built-in features using which we can start very quickly.
When you bring in the database file, is it like linking it to the file, or is it actually copying it in?
In case of connected data, it's reading.
Yeah.
In case of disconnected data,
It's just directing it to the database.
yeah.
Yeah.
In case of disconnected data, it's totally different. Besides data grid control, there's form view control. We have used forms, form submitting, retrieving information. So there's form view control as well. And if you add form view control, you can see again there's data source option. And if you link with the data source, whatever is being defined in the database design of that table, similar fields will be created. Okay, there would be some tweaking required, which we'll discuss in upcoming labs. But again, couple of clicks, control, data source. So, and this is an example of a form view. You can display information, and you can have these features: edit, delete. During edit, you can further customize them. If user do edit, what should be the possibilities, and so on. What fields should be able he should be able to edit, and what fields he or she should not be able to. Okay, and so on. Validation. There is a code which I have provided in this week of after tutorials, and that provides you further examples of validation, regular expression validation. If you give me a second, I can quickly show you. So this is week 6. Do look at this code. This will help you further validation. And if I can quickly show it to you. Okay, this is for here. So you can see that regular expression is being used to map, to basically match the pattern. And this is the pattern. And there's an explanation over it as well, what is being expected. Okay, so do look at this, and it will help you in your assessment. Okay? So there are various cases. For example, if it should be from 0 to 9 and it must be 6 to 8 digits. Okay, so with this expression you can validate it quite easily. Similarly, in PHP, you can also see like match is being used, and there is explanation what is being expected. Secondly, if you look over in this example, I have used a list to hold error messages. So when you validate your form, you will identify multiple errors. One way is just response.write. Okay, whenever you detect it, response.write, or you're saving in a certain variable. Best way is you can create an array, and in this case, because the C#, you can add that to an array, and in the end, when you know the error exists, you can print the array and you can display it to the user. Similarly, in PHP, instead of array, concatenation is used. You can use array as well in PHP, but in this case, concatenation is being used. So all error messages are being concatenated to this variables, and you should use at the end br as well. Okay, so that it should break as well. For example, this one. It's not over there, but you can add. Okay. Or you need to concatενate it. You got my point, okay? So this is another way you can manage the errors as well. How you're doing error messaging validation in traditional way. In this case, in data tab we have validation control. For example, compare validator, custom validator, range validator, and so on. We just need to add these validators on the form and link them to a certain field. Okay, so what's time now? Oh, we have something. Okay, for example, if you look over here, so this is form view, and in form view we are in insert item template. So form view allows us to add item, edit item, and delete item. So within form view, it means there are different templates available to us to use. We need to modify those templates, and we will see how we can do them. And over here I just added a one validator. Okay, product name should not be blank, and I just need to attach this. I can specify error message over here, and in one of the property I can mention that okay, this is attached to this text field which is product name. That's it. Okay, and when user will run it, it will display like this. We have login components, and you can use it. For example, this is again the tab, and you can drag and drop these, and you can configure it. I think I will provide you one example of login and session management in upcoming workshops, and you can go through this stuff. So IDEs provides a lot of feature. It really speed up the programming, but there are also certain issues, and the issues are maybe 80 to 90% of work you can do with drag and drop, but 10% would require a lot of efforts to fine tune them, and that 10% may take more time, and definitely will take more time than this 90% of work. So you have to identify how much you should do using that controls, and how much you need to go and the code behind and the ASP files to fine tune them, and so on. These are proprietary in nature, they are platform dependent, so you are confined to certain constraints. You have to work under certain constraints. Okay, so that's one limitation. And secondly, when you are using these environments, and if you're a new developer and you get a taste of such environment, then your learning curve, especially for coding, is reduced a lot. It's very hard for you to learn the coding, especially going in code behind and do the stuff. Okay. And in these cases, you can see that we are dropping a control and we are attaching the data source. So data design of your database is very critical. You have to design in a best possible fashion so that the same forms will be generated. When you are generating everything from the database, if you are linking the controls to the database, it means you are generating form on the basis of structure that you have in your database. So that's very important. Your database should be have good design. It should not be, information should not be redundant too much, and so on. So in short, IDEs provide a very powerful environment for you to develop, and they increase your development, and this is what required in today's market. You need to develop application as soon with minimum efforts, because there is manpower involved, there is cost involved, and Microsoft technologies, especially the VB6 was very popular. VB6 with Crystal reports provide you very fast development environment. That's why it was very popular. Same concept has been brought in web development environment. Okay, so that's the advantage. But again, beside advantages, we have to take into account some cost factors and other factors that affect the personal learning of especially new developers. That's it. In today's lab, there's no workshop. Okay, so you can spend your time working on assessments. Okay, so you can drop in an email with your code, and I will try to answer your queries. Okay, because I also asked online students during this time period, if they send me information, I will reply back to them. But if there's some serious issue, you're stuck, drop in an email. I will come down to the lab and will try to address your concern. Okay. Anything else?
Yes. In one of the other units we're doing, they're talking a lot about test-driven development.
Test-driven.
How does test-driven development fit into this?
Okay,
Or
so
doesn't it?
it does, especially when you're doing modular programming. You're developing, as a team, you're developing some modules that will be part of bigger application. Then you have to design test cases in order to validate the modular level testing, module level testing. So in Visual Studio, I think you can create test cases as well.
Okay, so there is a sort of a unit.
Like JUnit, yeah.
Okay.
There is. I need to figure it out that you can see that. So that once you deliver the module, you can say that this was the input and this is the output, and this is a test case you can use. You can give it to quality assurance person to test it. So that's very much relevant. Okay, thank you very much.
Unit testing, have you guys discussed